Why, hello everybody. It is Robbie from Southern California, Zone 10A, and this is the deck. I wanted to do this earlier today, but can you believe it's been almost 100 degrees today in November? Was it hot all day? And there was such a glare on the camera, I decided, no, I'll just wait till evening, make this short. I am not really doing a full update on the deck. The deck is doing good. I've got beans growing, Malabar spinach, walking onions, kale, basil, all kinds of stuff is growing. I even have a zucchini. I haven't even picked it yet because I've got so much in the yard. But what I wanted to do today was basically an update on the onions that I planted a month ago, because what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. And so I want to give you a heads up on things. There are the onions that I planted last month. So this is what I'm going to sit down and talk about this. These are the sets. Remember the sets that were just little tiny bulbs? A lot of them look dried. Well, you know what? They did really good. Those are the starts. Those were the green onions, and they are alive. I have dug them up and looked at them. They are doing okay. See, they're growing and they're in there. But the problem is they've been set back because they were already growing. I had to separate them. They were kind of overgrown. He gave me 10% off over at the nursery, and he knew better than me that it was going to set them back. But you know what? I have confidence that they're going to come back. They're already starting to come back. So my suggestion is, if you do decide to plant onions, because in some areas this is the time to do it. Some people are going to still be planting them in December. If you're in a good zone, I would say the sets actually, they took off. The moment they hit the soil, they started to grow. All the good ones started to grow. I don't know if there's quite 30 of them in there. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. You know, it looks like there's at least 26. That's pretty good considering there was only 30. So that's a real good turnover on that. I'm going to have onions in there. It's a little tight, but as they grow, you know, I'll take the onions, as I explained, from in between, and I'll pull them out like I did, you know, early this year. I had onions until just recently, and they're all gone. So when you pick them, then the ones around them will just keep growing and growing. So I don't care if I plant them tight or not. Same thing here, but I did it different. Let me explain what I did yesterday. And they're doing beautifully, because I'll tell you, as soon as I planted those, within a day or so, they all started to fall over the green, and it just plopped over, and I thought, uh-oh. Well, this time, since I had bought a few trays, and Gary didn't get to them all, I went into the front yard where I have a chair set up. You know how I do a lot of container gardening on a chair. And I took the green onion starts. They're actually white onions is what they are. They're white onions. It's starts. So in other words, they started from seeds. It's not a bulb. And I soaked them in water, in a pot in water, and I separated them gently. Not just pulling them, but I separated them gently in a flower pot with water, and they came apart really, really nice. So once I had them all separate, I then laid them in a pile and I trimmed the tops. So they were short. This way, when they get planted, because of course they're going to go in the transplant shock, they're not going to have to worry about the tall greens to keep that going, because that's what the plant is trying to do, is trying to save its leaves, and it can't pull enough and get roots growing and get situated in its new planter box or wherever you're planting it. So what I did was I trimmed them. That is an excellent way of doing it. Trim them down. You don't want to cut it all off. At least I didn't want to, because they weren't bulbs, but I trimmed them way down. Then once I had them all trimmed, I gently planted each one. And once they were all planted, they look like they should be fine. I've been checking them and they've been doing great. So that's what I should have done with the ones on the deck. I should have trimmed them first, taken all the green growth off, and then let them regrow new green growth at the same time, set better roots for it. Because the other ones, the bulbs, they just immediately the sets, they call them, they immediately do both. They start setting root and they start setting the greens. But in the front yard, on a chair, in a container, I did both. Gary went and picked me up. He said they didn't look like they got in anymore, and we did get it from Home Depot. He went the other day, said it was slim pickings, but he found the best he could, because I want to get a lot of onions growing. There is nothing nicer than stepping out from the kitchen, running out and getting a fresh onion. Too many onions in the stores. They look really nice, and you bring them home and you cut them, and they're not as nice inside. Mine, not one of them was bad when I grew them on my own here. And they're organic, and I know, how I'm growing them. So that's why I'm doing it that way this year. But as you can see, what I did, I got them planted on the chair and out front, and I did it really, really easily. And I've got both growing in that container now on the chair. I like the chair because it's off the ground, so that's going to keep the rabbits out of my onions. I don't have to bend. I'm crazy about planting on a chair. And you find a chair in the trash, somebody's throwing it away, just grab any chair. It's got legs, it can support somebody, then you can support a container. That's the way I look at it. And it worked out perfect. So all the onions got planted. They're doing really good. I've been checking on them. Trimming the tops. If you get onions that are, got long green tops, I would suggest to trim them. And then as far as using them in your salad right away or in your food that you're cooking, you could, but because you don't know I didn't know anything about it, how they treated them, I didn't know anything about it. So I decided to compost the green starts right now as far as the tops. And as the new tops come in, you can use the greens as well. And that's all there was to it. So I had another planter, and I decided to set up the rest of them in there because it was too many really to go in that one container on the chair. So I set those up in there, and I was just flabbergasted because it was sitting this long planter box container on the ground in the front yard on top of the wood chips. And when I moved that container, all the wood chips had broken down to this beautiful, dark, rich compost soil. Looked better than the potting soil that I bought. And I used that, and the onions look really good. I planted in that. It was beautiful. I didn't even need potting soil for that. That was the best. So if you got wood chips and you want to break some wood chips down really, really quick, put anything on top and just keep it damp, water it off and on, and those microbes and earthworms and everything will come underneath the big container that you've got, let's say sitting on wood chips, and it will break the wood chips down instantly. I mean, literally within a couple months, you'll have beautiful soil you can grab and put in a container and grow it. So that's basically it. The front yard now is all planted. I got them on my deck as well. Everything looks really good. I just wanted to kind of do an update on what's going on the deck. And as you can see, they're still alive, but they do have to make a comeback. So they'll be fine. And then, of course, the other ones are doing really good. And those are in my 2-system container. Now, real quick, somebody else had asked me, aren't they beautiful? These Brad's Atomic tomatoes, they're still growing really good. And they're sweet. They're so sweet. These are Leeks. Gary brought me up some seeds, and he asked me to plant them, and I've got too many. So we've got to get these separated. Look at the baby papayas. He ate a papaya, and I threw a few seeds in there, and those are baby papayas. So they're coming up. And then these are baby walking onions. I brought them over from my garden, and I put them in this container. And those were nothing. They were just little bulbs I had picked off the top, and they're taking off. These are both in my 2-system containers that I've showed you. And it's very hard to do it one-handed, but I'm trying. So this way, if you had something growing and you wanted to leave it outside, but the weather turned and you had a really bad weather, you could drop it in the other container and bring it in, because this green one and this top one, these have the holes, but the bottom container does not. So you could leave it anywhere sitting outside, and the moment you have to bring it in and you want to sit it on the floor, there's no holes in the bottom container. So that's my 2-system container gardening, and that's for indoor and outdoor gardening, and that just works perfect. So anyways, I had some questions on why do I want to grow onions if I have so many walking onions? Walking onions are very similar to what you would buy in the store as green onions. You mainly use your walking onions, your Egyptian onions, for the greens, but that is not to say you cannot eat the bulbs. But think of it this way. If you know what an onion set is, those very, very small bulbs, that's basically how big they get. So even when they get real big, the onion's not going to be too much bigger than about that big around, maybe the size of a quarter. They can get a little bigger, but they're small onions, and they're perfectly fine to eat. And you can even eat the baby onion sets if you've got that many. I love my walking onions, so I tend to leave the big ones in the ground and just use the greens, and I use the greens in the same way and fashion that I would use white or yellow onions. They're that good and so good tasting. So as far as the onions, that's the reason that I grow both, because for a white or yellow onion, and it doesn't matter to me which one, red onion's a little different. It has a little bit different taste. I like using the red onion. For me personally, in let's say a sandwich or a salad raw, where I cook, and that's not to say I don't eat the white and yellow onions raw once in a while, but I tend to cook with white and yellow onions more. So that's the only difference between them. It's your own preference. Everybody's got their own preference. Gary doesn't happen to like red onions that much, even though he still wanted a tray. So everybody's got their own preference. But that's the reason why I buy the white and yellow large onions, because the walking onions, even though they'll get really tall and big, let's see if we can swing over here. They're falling over. See, here's the babies. If I pick them, I don't know if you can see, they're not that big. They are good size, but they're not that big. And then the sets, you could eat the sets as well. These are the top sets, you can eat them too. So that's why I grow both. This is the container that I grew the onions in this past year. I planted them last December. I wonder if I left one in there. Maybe I left two in there. I don't think so. It might be walking onions. I'm not sure. But anyways, I had this packed with 30 onions, and I would just come out here and pick an onion, and they just kept growing and growing. Now the tomato seed came up, so I'm going to leave that. But that's it. My oregano died back from the heat. It's still trying to come back, but it's root bound, so I'm going to take a lot of that out and leave a lot of the roots in there, and it will come back. And like I said, it's been really hot. Look, this has to be cleaned up really good. These are my garlic chives. But all in all, I have been, just picking a lot of food from the garden up on the deck here. This has been amazing. Sage and kale and just so many things. And like I said, I didn't even want to pick the zucchini. Just in case I need a zucchini, I know where one is. The plant's still growing, so that means it hasn't hardened up. If I pick it and leave it in the house, I've talked about that, the outside will get really hard, and I don't want it to get really hard. So that's basically it. And I just wanted to do the update on that. So if you're in doubt which you should get, starts or sets, I would say go ahead and get the sets, because the moment they hit the soil, you probably grow them in the house and put them out in the spring, they will just take off. So that's it for today. I hope I've given you some ideas, and this is just the way I think. I think the sets did so much better. So with that, I wanted to make a quick comeback and tell you, no, get the sets. They're easier to handle. You just put them in a pot and deal with them. You don't have to worry about the starts that may fall back, especially if you're growing them in the winter now. They'll kind of go backwards and then they'll start again. So get the sets. Anyways, that's up to you. Have a great day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye, everybody.